And so, hi, everyone. So this is November 3, our kickoff meeting for the Soil and Water Educational Informational Webinar. So we'll start with introductions. So who would like to get going?
Sure, I will.
Yeah, okay, Gretchen.
My name is Gretchen Bolito. I live in Bend, and I have been chair of the Juniper Group, which is part of the Oregon Chapter Sierra Club, for a number of years. And it always makes sense to me that agriculture and soil health relates totally to climate work. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks. Okay, who is going next? Sarah. Okay.
Hi, nice to see everyone. I'm actually far flung from not Bend in Vermont, actually. And I've worked with Klaus through BCL and CCL on an ag series on regenerative soil. So we've known each other for a few years on these endeavors.
Sarah has been doing all the creative on the webinars that we have been developing. And social media advertising, social media material, collateral, and so on. Okay. And here we have Josie, League of Women Voters, joining us. Brad, you want to go next?
Sure. I guess I joined the Bend CCL chapter sometime around 2015, and then I quit it shortly before COVID, I think. I guess in that whole time, I also have, just dabbled in water issues. I go to as many water meetings as I can and read as much water literature as I can. And I've probably gone, Locavore has this thing called Willing Workers on Local Farms. I've probably gone to 8 or 10 of those in the last 5 years, and just always like to just get the boots on the ground, talk to actual farmers, see what they're doing. So, because I'm not formally attached to any group right now, but it's all just something I'm interested in working on. That's it for me.
Okay. Emma, could you go next?
I'm Emma. I work with the District Soil and Water Conservation District, and I'm really interested in regenerative agriculture. Urban agriculture is really interesting to me, and just trying to figure out the reality of how to actually make these things work is something that I'm passionate about.
Okay. Erin, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Erin Kilcullen. I'm the manager for Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District. And like I said previously, I've been in this role about 2.5 years, and I'm still learning a lot. My background was in wildlife and restoration ecology. So agriculture and farming is definitely a whole new realm for me. And it's been really great to be a part of everything. And I can talk more about the programs we have, but I'm excited to start this conversation. I think it's really important to get out to our community, and I think there's a lot of groups that should be invited to this, and I'm not sure too if we want to expand outside of water and agriculture and include forestry as well. I mean, there's a lot of different natural resources that we address. So I know that this is just the first meeting, but I'm really excited to just have these conversations.
That's awesome. Thank you. Josie, do you want to go next?
Sorry. My name is Josie Kerner. I was asked by the League of Women Voters to see if I would follow agriculture a little bit. I've been doing forestry for them for several years. So I go to all the board meetings. I know what's going on in forestry. And I'm also been working with the OCAP groups, the Oregon Climate Action Team. And I'm also working with the climate people on Kathy McDonald's, the Global Warming Commission. They're putting in a bill with Denbrough. So I'm on that group. I'm also a member of Tree Keepers, and we are interested in trying to get an urban forestry program going, and we're hoping to connect with the Soil and Water Conservation Group in Washington County to sponsor our tree keeping database stuff. But anyway, I need to know a lot more about agriculture. It would really help with selling things to the commissioners. We're trying to get them to make a climate action plan. And if I have some very good suggestions and background, it would help. So, you know, I haven't really focused on our agriculture at all, except to know about no-tilth and low-tilth a little bit, and that's not much. And so that's, I'm reporting on this for the league and also on the OCAP table. It's the Oregon Climate Action Team table for land. It's called Natural and Working Lands, and that includes agriculture and forestry. So I report about that, etc. So sorry it takes so long.
No, okay, thank you, Josie. That's awesome. So yeah, I think we went through it. So I moved to Bend in 2016 and joined the local CCL group, and they referred me to the national team to be on the National Food and Agriculture Network. And then I became sector leader, Food and Agriculture for Business Climate Leaders, which is an initiative of CCL. And then I became liaison to the Sierra Club, and then they asked me to join the National Grassroots Network team for food and agriculture. So I've been with those two organizations for several years. Then we started connecting with other NGOs, you know, on the national level to lobby Congress, basically the agriculture committees in both the Senate and the House. And that has become really intense. And since the Biden administration came in, we had some remarkable successes because we found some senators and some members of Congress who were really open-minded to this and are really supportive. So the long and short of it is that we were able to maneuver $20 billion out of the Inflation Reduction Act into the Title II conservation programs of the Farm Bill, which I never knew what that was when I started on all this. And I'm like super conscious because I had a front tooth pulled yesterday because I had an infection. It'll take a little while to get this replaced. So it's like, holy smokes, I have a hole in my tooth. But anyway, so that was like, wow, we got $20 billion, to feed into these programs. But then there goes, so what do you do with it? Now, where does this money go? And a couple of months ago, we worked with the Sierra Club chapter from Illinois to meet with the local conservation districts and a couple of farmers and USDA, simply from an educational perspective. And so the executive director from the Illinois conservation districts took time, I mean, really met with me several times to educate me and help us understand how the government is organized, right? And so, I mean, I had literally no idea. And then what I found like so interesting is that the conservation districts were founded under President Roosevelt in the 1930s during the Dust Bowl crisis. And the idea was that they needed to find a way to disseminate science and best available information and resources from the federal government down to farmers, location specific, right? And in order to not lose the money in the middle, right, with all the middlemen here, they developed these conservation districts. And even today, there are about 3,000 conservation districts in the United States, spread across every single county. And the idea was to have a local person develop local contacts, develop trust-based relationships locally, to then to help farmers and other constituents who are engaged in soil and water to access funding from the federal government, funding and resources, not just money, but also the science behind it. And so that was what stimulated us to then go. So how can we assist, working with at the community level to access this money and get it into the right hands, right? And so my personal background is I've been working as a food service executive. So I worked for the Walt Disney Company as a director of food service development and so on. And I worked for an international company as a strategist, one of the largest food wholesalers in the world, based in Germany. And so I'm not really a farmer, right? But so I'm more sitting in the middle from a wholesale perspective, retail perspective. So what became quite obvious is that we can't ask a farmer to change what they're growing unless they also have a market to sell into. So if we're going to tell farmers to not grow alfalfa and flood the field and waste all this water, but grow maybe the pulses instead, or other kinds of crops that are conducive to the soil and then repair the soil, bring nitrates into the soil, through photosynthesis and so on. Where is he going to sell this, right? So there is the need for farmers to get just a whole lot of support now, and it involves really the entire community. And then the reason why we really wanted to go super local is that in wherever you look, you have unique conditions of soil, types of soil, conditions of soil. It's different in Florida than in California or in Oregon. It's different in the high desert in the Willamette Valley. Access to water is different and unique. Climate is unique. And then, but also really importantly, socioeconomic environment, right? The regulatory process, access to labor force, and so on, and preferences of the population and what they like to eat. So there are so many moving parts, to all this. Then we thought we would like to find a process, of working with a community to access a community, and develop a process structure, right, that initiates this kind of change management. So that's where my head is, right? And so the thinking here. So I'm like super excited that Aaron is willing here to and really to step up and get into this. The Sierra Club is very active on the national level, and in virtually every state chapter, engaged in these soil and agriculture and agroforestry and so on. So that's why maybe if I share my screen, we can get into the agenda that I suggested for today. Can you see that good? Is that big enough?
Yep.
Okay.
A little
Klaus,
bit
can I-
big, big.
Klaus, can I ask one question real quick before you start?
You bet.
So Aaron and Emma, when you said Deschutes Conservation District, does that mean Deschutes County, or is it like some larger Deschutes Riverish entity? Like, what's the geographic boundaries that
Yeah,
you
so
work
in
in?
Oregon, every county has a soil and water district. Some
Okay.
have two. So I know Multnomah, for example, has an east and a west soil and water conservation district. But yeah, our boundary is Deschutes County.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions before I move on here? So the intention is to create an educational, informational event, that explains the challenges farmers are facing from changing weather patterns. And we are deliberately not talking about climate change because a lot of farmers are just, super sensitive towards climate change, because what we learned in our focus groups is that farmers associate climate change with regulation. They're worried they're going to get regulated by someone in Washington who doesn't know what they're doing and come up with all kinds of difficult things to execute on. So they don't want to talk about climate change. But every farmer out there knows that they're dealing with different weather patterns. It rains less often, and when it rains, it just really comes down hard. And so it's creating a lot of issues. So to explain the resources that are available from USDA and conservation districts to assist farmers, not just to explain, here's what's available, and here's how this all works. And then there are some market-driven programs. There is that USDA has developed, and these are specifically being funded, is a farm-to-school program, farm-to-food bank, farm-to-table. These are community-based efforts to basically create a community-based food system, right? To stimulate food being grown and distributed at the local level. And this is particularly important to support what we call the base of pyramid economy, meaning the low-income, food insecure people, to support them with food, because that's just a socially critical thing to do, particularly as we move into more difficult times as we are. And then so to bring attention to the considerable funds being provided by the Inflation Reduction Act that I mentioned. And then there's a new thing that just came out about a month ago, Hunger, Nutrition and Health Initiative. So the White House has dedicated a full-time staff to deal with this Hunger, Nutrition and Health Initiative, recognizing that maybe 70% of our healthcare bill is nutrition cost. Poor diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and so on and so on. And so, where are you with this? Are you okay with this position, Aaron, in particular? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I guess my first initial thought, maybe it's just more clarifying. Is the audience that you think you're seeking just generally everyone in Deschutes County? Is it farmers? Is it large landowners? Because to me, looking at regenerative agriculture and then also farm to school, those are very, I know that they coincide and overlap, but they're also very different in my mind at the same time. So
yeah, I mean, audience is, yeah, that's probably the key discussion. So I started looking at what Bend is doing from a sustainability perspective. So here is the sustainability website and focus. So energy and climate is big, and everywhere you look, the conversation is like 90% focused on energy and energy systems. So that's really well done, and there's a lot of action happening in Bend in the energy and climate sector. But when you then trim it down, when you go into like community climate action, there's nothing about agriculture in here. It's all fossil fuel. Stay informed, and so the entire focus almost now is on energy systems, and the reason why this is so important, we really know from United Nations reports, I mean, global reporting, that roughly 1/3 of global emissions are caused by the way we grow and raise food. The food system, and it's not just emitting carbon out of the soil, it's also synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, nitrates, which is also pesticides and herbicides that are made with oil. It's 1,000 miles of logistics systems where food is being shipped all over the planet. And so combining all of these things together, roughly 1/3, they're saying between 25 and 35% of emissions are caused by agriculture, and it's not being recognized yet. And so so I was thinking that maybe the city sustainability team would be a target audience, because then when we go to water, for example, I heard a report, Aaron, correct me if this is not right. 86% of all water usage in the high desert is agriculture.
yeah.
So we are focusing.
Municipality, so
Say that again.
it's only 2% municipality.
Yeah. So we are focusing all our energy on 14% of water usage. And the big water consumption, 86%. Is not being addressed, not being talked about.
Well, I don't think the city of Bend is to talk about that because there's only one farm in the city limits. So
that's a good point.
I don't think the city is going to talk about agriculture unless it's in urban. And I think the city of Bend, for example, is starting to take strides in urban agriculture, but all the agriculture is just on county land and outside of city limits.
Okay. Josie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I live in Washington County and it's a large agriculture state. We have a lot of almond trees, which take up a lot of water. We have all kinds of nurseries. There's the Willamette Vet. Our water system, I live right by Hag Lake, and our dam houses puts water into the Tualatin River, and all the Willamette irrigation is drawn from that Willamette, the Tualatin River, what do you call it? A watershed. And so I just wanted to say that I follow things at the state level. So bills that come up about with anything with forestry, and I have looked at a bunch of things on how we spend our money, and I know that we had a pretty good going farm to school program that was really working well. And I know that there was a request to fund it. So I think that if you think about bringing this, some of the money that you've so well done a great job collecting from the federal, maybe it can assist also with some of these state projects of farm to school, because it's all, the network's already there. It's been done. So it would be great to connect with that group. And also, yeah, so anything you can feed me, that might need legislation or, some kind of grassroots involvement, that's sort of how I might be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I mean, Aaron, we will podcast this discussion in beyond Deschutes County, in a much wider circle. Like with Illinois, we went there. We had the state director from the Soil and Water Conservation join us, but we went national with the. I think we had over 300 people joining in, 360 some people. So here also we definitely will put this out at the state level at the very least. And then of course, when you think about Bend being the population center here, here are the restaurants, here are the schools, the population lives here. So when we integrate the markets, the market considerations, then this is here in Bend. Because the surrounding communities don't have enough market power to really impact this. So
I kind of see, this is just a very broad statement, but just even from what you've gone over so far, I kind of see this as maybe being a series.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
I
that.
see kind of 4 parts here, and maybe it's just titled Working Lands versus agriculture and soil and water, and that could include forest landscapes, because that has it has a lot of input into our water resources and soil health. I also see rural agriculture, so outside of city limits within Deschutes County, and maybe that includes all of Central Oregon. And then I see urban agriculture. And then I also see a 4th component, which is the farm to school, farm to table component. And maybe that could be wrapped up into the rural agriculture, but I think they're all so different and different audiences. So that's just a thought.
no, I mean,
It
that's
makes it complicated to make this into one
Yeah.
panel versus 4. But I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on that. But that's
Yeah.
why I see that.
I was just gonna say kind of what Aaron was saying is that sustainable food systems do have many different facets in them, and that includes different stakeholders. And like Aaron was suggesting, like the rural farming community is going to have different educational pieces to it than, say, talking to people regarding farm to school, or farm to school, farm to table. That's a whole different audience and curriculum that would be brought up. So I think the idea of having different sessions or a bigger series where we focus on different sections makes a lot of sense.
okay. Josie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just think the combination with so much of what's going on in agriculture, you could say the same for forestry. The use of fertilizers and pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, is a great concern to a lot of people. And the way harvests are done, it's a huge contributor of CO2 emissions, which isn't even being sorry, I have a trouble with words sometimes.
That's no worries.
Yeah, well, the DEQ is not collecting data on how much emissions the harvesting and basically the whole timber industry is doing. How they're harvesting and so on affects our water supply because the silt gets in the water and that has to be fixed before you could treat the water. And so it's hurt a lot of coastal communities. So there's a lot of similarities, and I think you need some that bring it together, the concern about water supply and what these industries could do to better, not regulate, but they could do better. And I've heard a lot of conversation when it comes up in the legislature from farmers. They say, we do a lot of these really good conservation practices and we're getting no credit for it. So I think that's something to consider is the incentives to do things the right way has to be part of it. And that's true for forestry and for agriculture.
Farmers. Yeah, that's really a big point, because some farmers are already way out there and they don't get any recognition or benefits because the money, the grants are really for those that are running behind, and need development. Erin, I like this. Go ahead, Gretchen.
I was just thinking that it would be important to bring in the Deschutes County Commission, since they track land throughout the whole county. And if we get Morgan and Oliver on the commission, they would be much more receptive to these kinds of things than the Republicans on there now that they would hopefully replace. Because, they are very interested, and I've spoken with them, interviewed them, about helping the community, and this would just really fit right in to what they're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I like this idea of breaking it up because it's just so much, and I think we would overwhelm people trying to squeeze all of that into one discussion. But maybe if we can set up a series upfront, so we titled it, and then we can get maybe people interested to see more than one session, because it builds up to, we're building the topic up to some logic. I do like that.
I
Okay.
don't know if you guys have attended any of Deschutes River Conservancy's Raise the Deschutes talks, but it's a very similar idea of what we're discussing, in the sense that they have different sessions related to different forms of water or different topics of water. And it'd just be an interesting thing if you guys want to look into that more on how we could set this up to be a little bit more of a discussion instead of like presentation style.
So partner with, I didn't catch that, Emma. Partner with?
Deschutes River Conservancy, DRC. Maybe not necessarily partner with them on this, but just takeaways from their experiences.
Okay. Maybe instead of partner, just work with, right?
Yeah, sure.
Also Tualatin River Keepers.
What was the first word?
Tualatin, that's the watershed that's a large watershed. There's a lot of the irrigation everywhere.
Okay. Okay,
Well, I also think this is, I don't know if we should necessarily go into water. Just because, like Emma just said, Deschutes River Conservancy is currently doing a whole water series. That's, I think, six events over 6 months. So I think they're pretty much covering it. I just think if we're sticking with working lands, I mean, it would obviously be brought up because water is essential and we're in a drought. But I don't know if this is the right forum for that. If this is more, I mean, if we're really trying to discuss funding for farmers, I mean, obviously water's in there, but it seems like this is going to be more geared towards agriculture and regenerative farming and kind of changing practices. And
yeah,
um,
yeah,
obviously water is going to be included because there's a lot of work being done to conserve water. I mean, we work closely with farmers to help them upgrade their irrigation system. So that's obviously going to be brought up, but I don't think for this forum, we should go into the depths of water conservation.
yeah. The starting point really was soil, right? Because soil that is depleted of organic matter doesn't hold water. So for every 1% of organic matter added to the soil, it can hold between 18 and 22,000 gallons of water per acre. So that's amazingly significant. And then the other thing, of course, is that the runoff of nutrients from farmland into watersheds is causing all this contamination, algal blooms, and so on. So that's sort of the narrow focus. And in order to fix that, the farmer will have to use what we call regenerative practices, which is like no-till, using cover crops, rotate crops, and so on. And so that's sort of the key focus. And then from a systems perspective, we want to then expand into, so if we ask a farmer to go into cover crops, what kind of a cover crop are we talking about? What is he going to do with this cover crop? Is this a cash crop? Yeah. And if we are asking him to rotate crops, well, is there a market for those crops? And if not, can we create markets? So that's sort of the general direction we wanted to take. Brad, you have your hand up.
I'm still having a little bit of a hard time understanding if our intended audience is the public or trying to educate farmers that there's this $20 billion of money out there, or if it's 50-50. Because like, you know, I've been to quite a few of those Deschutes River Conservancy meetings Emma just talked about, and various other river and water meetings. And I try to talk to as many people as I can at those things, and almost never do farmers come to those meetings because they already know everything that ever gets said at those meetings. So there's nothing there that's said that would teach them anything. So I still don't quite understand whether we're trying to get farmers to show up to these meetings or the public to show up to these meetings, because it's two very different agendas.
I agree with that, Brad. I think that's kind of like why I had that first question of who the audience is. And I can see this as if we did have it over 4 sessions. I mean, the one on regenerative agriculture, I think that's going to be, I would love for that to be geared to farmers, because I don't think
Right.
a lot of large agriculture producers in Deschutes County know that there's a lot of resources out there to assist them. I also think that regenerative agriculture is so new, and I mean, it's teaching an old dog new tricks. I mean, I'm still educating myself on it. And I think this would be a great opportunity to educate farmers on that. And also if this money comes through to Deschutes County, I mean, maybe that can include this could be kind of like a kickoff to a whole education forum that our district could lead, because we do irrigation water management workshops. And I know that we would love to expand that to regenerative agriculture. And then
So we had 2 farmers in the Illinois webinar who were really knowledgeable and took full advantage of all the programs out there. And And in the webinar, I asked them the question. So let's say you take a new piece of land that's completely degraded. You got this new farm, you just contracted. Where would you start? And then they're so explained, I would have to build berms, pollinator strips and things like this. So we went through this whole process of explaining how to restore your soil. Gretchen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a farm to table event coming up, which will have just a whole host of farmers there trying to sell off their excess crops like potatoes and fruits and, all kinds of things. So I've been to that event in the past and, there's a lot of farmers there. It'd be a way to reach them with some publicity about an event, if you wanted to reach out as a group.
Yeah, definitely. And what we're trying to achieve is to have this farm to table become structured and formalized. That means that there are aggregators, there are brokerages and so on that deal with this on a regular basis. Because the way agriculture works is mostly on a program basis, right? Typically, the crop is sold before it goes into the ground. I mean, at least with larger farmers. So the farmers are working ahead, maybe 6 months or so, and larger users are contracting with farmers for specific types of crops. So this kind of brokerage function is not working anymore because the larger companies have pulled that in-house, and they want to work with very large farms. They don't want to work with an 80-acre or 100-acre farm. It's not efficient for them. So there needs to be the creation of a marketplace, that helps to connect these smaller farmers, mid-sized farmers, the agriculture of the middle, with the marketplace, and that eco-trust is big into this kind of approach, and so that would be an important part, Gretchen, is to not have this be done random. Because I was working, with the High Desert Food and Farm Alliance here, and when we were sitting there, a farmer calls up and he had like 800 pounds of potatoes, and another guy had like a bumper crop of tomatoes, and they had no market for it, and they basically lost it because none of the grocery stores would buy it. There was no buyer for it available. And so you can't just show up with a crop or a larger volume crop and then expect to find buyers, commercial buyers. Yeah, Erin.
Another thought that I don't know how to say this, I guess, but I see like there's two different agriculture producers. I mean, you have your vegetable farmers, and I would say the event that you're talking about, I'm just drawing a blank on it. I go to it every year as well. And I'm not saying that those vegetable farmers need assistance, because they do, but I would say most of them have the education and the organizations that they already work with. Another audience that I really see that needs to be targeted is the smaller landowners that, they have a pivot and they're producing hay, or the new landowners that are managing 40 acres and it's not their full-time job, but they're still a steward of our land and the soil. And so that's a lot of farmers that we work with, is newer landowners who are trying to do their best with a smaller parcel of land, but they're not necessarily producing for vegetables for our local community, but we still like to keep those agricultural lands in place and protect them and work with them on regenerative agriculture. So that's another target audience that I see as well.
Okay. So that would be the first episode is regenerative agriculture. And then, but really point to it within the context of these $20 billion that became available through the Title II conservation programs to generate interest and have farmers, because a lot of farmers may not even apply anymore because these programs have been so oversubscribed. It has been difficult to get access to it. We heard that as little as 20–30% or so of applications actually get funded. Is that still correct, Erin?
I'm not sure. So I'm not really sure how this Inflation Reduction Act is going to play out. I do know it's probably all gonna go to NRCS, to their current programs. And I mean, our revenue office, most of NRCS, they don't have the capacity to manage that money. And so that's a big conversation is how, and the hope is that they don't turn that money away because they don't have the capacity to handle it. Because the SWCDs are here and we have a easier time of doing hiring. So it might be having agreements with NRCS for us to hire staff to help with that funding, but I'm just not sure how it's all gonna play out. I don't even think that they know at this time.
They don't, we know that they
Yeah.
don't.
So,
But that's
I mean, that's like a
exactly,
scary thing that might happen and it's so much money coming in that no one has the capacity to handle that much money.
and that's exactly why we are engaging here, because it's clear that, you know, these agencies have been underfunded for so long and under-resourced that all of a sudden, you know, here comes this bulge through, and then so, but from what I understand, the conservation districts have the capacity to subcontract. And,
Yeah,
and,
so we could have an agreement with NRCS. The biggest thing with a lot of this, so if it's, is engineering, if it's an irrigation improvement project. A lot of it too has to do with cultural resource surveys. So they just don't have the staff to do that, and any land that goes through a contract with NRCS has to have a cultural resource survey. So it would be hiring those private engineers and cultural resource people to help get the projects on the ground.
yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts with this federal money.
But that would be the soil and water conservation districts that have the capacity and the contractual capacity to do that. Is that correct?
We would, I mean, we would have to go through a hiring process and yeah, it's just, I'm not sure what that would look like. Yeah.
So these are really the
Conversations are
kinds
just
of
starting.
questions we want to explore. I mean, those are super important issues, right? Right, yeah, and
So just another way of thinking about this, would you say the holy grail of all this is to have all of the farmers in Jefferson County practicing regenerative agriculture in 20 years or something like that? Because like when I drive around Deschutes County, it feels like there's already a lot more organic matter in the soil because all the farmers in Deschutes County have more water than the farmers in Jefferson County. When I drive around up there, it looks like there's no organic matter in any of the dirt. And it has an enormous capacity to pour a huge amount of organic matter into the dirt in Jefferson County versus Deschutes County. That's just my sense from driving around and going to like these handful of farms I've gone to. It's like, are we even thinking about like, is that the holy grail? And are we even, or is that just way too impossible to even be talking about right now?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to do all of Central Oregon. Deschutes County, Jefferson County, and Crook County. Because we're all so different, and yeah, you said it right, Brad. I mean, Deschutes County has most of all the irrigators are on COID, so have senior water rights. We do have Arnold Irrigation District patrons that got their water cut off. But overall, yeah, Jefferson are the real profitable farmers that do it for a living with less water.
Because when Klaus and I, go back to like at the beginning days of CCL or whatever, like if you're really just talking about climate, this whole subject so far has got a million other issues besides climate. But if your main focus is climate and pouring carbon into the soil, it seems like around here, what we need to be doing is concentrating on what people are doing in Jefferson County.
I
well,
think it would be good to include both counties. I mean, I think Deschutes has a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah,
as
but
well.
like, I mean, if you actually
County will
sat around
cover
and
both.
did the math and said, how much carbon could we put in the soil in Jefferson County versus what's already there? And how much could we put in the soil in Deschutes County versus what's already there. My wild guess is that we could put a lot more carbon into Jefferson County than Deschutes County, but I mean, that's a 30,000-foot view of everything.
But
Yeah,
we
I think
we
that'll
don't,
be determined when the funding comes down of how NRCS divides it. So it might come to all the counties. I'm just not sure. I agree with what you're saying, but yeah, I'm just not sure. Like if that Inflation Reduction Act gets spread out all of Eastern Oregon, every county will get some of that.
Josie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to question you about, there's usually a dichotomy between agricultural land and forest land, but I'm just wondering if, you know, planting trees and then crops intermingled isn't beneficial to both agriculture and increases the soil, because all the microbes from the trees, all that web of root system and so on, and is awfully good for the soil and the litter that builds up, etc. So I'm just wondering if there's been any research on the kinds of agriculture that can be done in coexistence or
Yeah, it's
with
called-
trees.
It's
trees.
referred to as agroforestry. And
Yes.
it's actually one of the most efficient forms of farming on a calorie per acre basis. It's the most productive form of farming.
So I would think that because there is money coming in for regenerative, you know, for afforestation and reforestation, and it could be shared and be useful to combine this money with it as well. And the other thing, just a sec, back to the farm to school thing, there's already all these networks of organic farmers and so on, and it could be a condition of a match that if the state puts in such and such of a match and the requirement is that it's regenerative, local, small farmers, farm to market, farm to school, you know, I think that you're funding it as a match for state funding would be useful.
Yeah, I see. I mean, there may be a risk of us offering solutions at this point, because for sure somebody is already out there, you know, having thought of stuff that we may not have considered. So to make this as informational as possible, because I mean, when we started this conversation, there are two open positions in the Deschutes County conservation for conservationists, and no one knew about it. You know, and so there hasn't been any focus on what is a conservationist, what do they do, and how do they operate. So to just educate, you know, the more general public, but then also the city council, the sustainability groups within the city, you know, that this is really an important function to pay attention to. And by the way, there's, you know, huge amounts of money coming into that position. I think that in itself would be really helpful. You know, and so I agree that, you know, if we just focus on farmers first and tell farmers, hey guys, look here, there's a lot of money coming in, and if you have any interest at all, here's how this works. You know, here's how you apply for it. Here are the key issues that you may want to focus on as you restore your soil and so on. And then the secondary thing would be, and, you know, as we're asking these farmers to change, then we also need to have markets for them to sell into. So the markets have to adapt themselves as well. So to just explain that from a very functional, systems-oriented way, you know, and because I think every time I try to have solutions, I run into someone who knows a whole lot more than I do, and has thought of stuff that I haven't thought of. And so does that make sense? Does that resonate, to just keep this like really informational?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
So if we have, you know, one focus on regenerative agriculture here, and then do one on market development, you know, and then maybe say local market development. And there are some amazing examples from around the country, like the Palouse, for example, has a very advanced local markets system developed now where they have I mean they're now providing slaughterhouse capacity for small farmers to access meat markets and so on. So they're already way out there, and there are some great examples from around the country. But then I don't know who is all aware of these Title II conservation programs that are focused on local market development. You know, like the farm to table and the marketing support programs and so on that are here. So that again, that would be an entirely different audience, but it would be important for farmers to understand who to work with, you know, in order to change and adapt their crops. How does that sound so far? You're reflective, Aaron. What do you think?
I think I would just have to learn more about the local market that you're discussing, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely. But local market, for example, is farm to school.
Mhm.
And what many communities have done, they're working with the catering organizations, and some of them are very large, you know, Cisco and Aramark and so on. And they're very receptive to working with local farmers, but they need to have an organization in place to where they can have a reliable supply. So this whole farm to school program is a great way to start high volume food production, because there's thousands of meals being served every day, even here in Bend. You know, so that is a significant marketplace. So I can flesh that out more and put some meat around it. That's a horrible thing to say. Sorry, but put some information around it.
Ironically, the Casad farm in Jefferson County, the only USDA grant, they farm regeneratively. The only USDA grant they've ever got is for them to ship their meat to non-local markets.
Really?
They've done all the rest on their own dime.
Yeah, and see, but this is where it's important for the city to engage. So we may not source directly from within the shoots, from within the Bend County or the Bend vicinity or the Shoots vicinity, but it's important because we are the major market in the high desert. And so clearly we'll reach outside the Shoots County to communicate this. So we're running against the clock here. Do we have access to some farmers? Aaron, do we know of a couple of farmers who may be interested to join a discussion like this?
Yeah, I can talk to my coworkers. They're the main ones that work with all of our farmers on like irrigation upgrades. And I think it'd be good to have maybe, like, I just think of possibly having like a veggie farmer on the panel, and then also possibly a rancher or someone that just has hay. I mean, just having two different varieties of producers, I think would be beneficial.
Yeah, and it would be good if they were a little bit more sized, some larger farmers who maybe farm full time and are professional. So Megan Campbell from the Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network also offered to help us with finding panel members.
She told me that she couldn't give names out. So maybe it's different.
I didn't hear that. She told you what?
She told me that she couldn't provide names of farmers.
She could not?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I was asking her for another purpose and she couldn't give me the information of those farmers that she works with.
They could contact you all if she gave them the information about the event. and presented the ideas to them, they could contact you if you're interested
Mhm.
or they're interested.
I have a meeting with her next week, so maybe I can follow up on that. So for next steps, so we have two topics here: regenerative agriculture and then local market development. How else would you want to break that out? What when we say maybe 4 sessions, what else would we add on to this?
I'm not sure if he wants to do urban agriculture and forested land were my other 2 ideas, but
Okay. And then 4,
possibilities. Forested land?
is it forest land?
Sure. Because that Inflation Reduction Act might be across all working lands. It might not just be for agriculture. I'm not sure.
I think it is, yeah.
It is, okay.
Yeah, I know forestry has a bunch of money. It's being funneled through one particular organization. Can't think of the name right.
Through ODF. Oregon, no.
Okay, yeah, but then we need to have someone else moderate this because I don't know enough about forest land, but that's all good. All right, so how often should we meet to advance this? So Sarah is our creative person. No, we're going to set up a website page where we'll keep recordings and meeting notes and all of that. And then as soon as we have some structure, we'll set up a MailChimp page to where we can send that to people to explain what we're doing and working on. So she'll do all the creative part of this. And by the way, we have an organization that the Business Climate Leaders is morphing into climate systems support solutions. And we have some funding, to support this all. So we can develop the social media and marketing programs here.
Thought about a date for this?
Yep, good, great. Yeah, here's this was the question. Find a target date. What would be a good target date?
I would like to wait to maybe see how this Inflation Reduction Act is coming down. But I'm not sure.
You're thinking,
I-
but it takes
I-
a long time. I mean, it takes a minimum of 2.5, 3 months to develop something like this. You have to talk to so many people and give it time to. Typically, it takes about 60 days or so to just get a panel together and people committed and all that, and then you need to advertise it and put it into social media channels. So end of January, something like this.
Though I would imagine there are 2 concerns about the timing just in general. And that would be in part, maybe honing in on the more specifics of the subject of the Inflation Reduction Act and that sort of business. But the timeliness and the funding issues are going to be happening sooner rather than later. So getting people to think about these things as soon as possible without maybe some definitives yet wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, I would think it would be possible to plan 2 months ahead of time and then really get more finessed on the discussion points.
Does anybody know when each county is supposed to find out how much money they get?
That's an important question. A lot of that money is being distributed on a demand basis. So for example, Tyson already got $90 million, right? And you know that every dairy out there and CAFOs and what have you, they have programs on the shelf to pull off and apply for this money. And typically what's left out are the smaller producers and community level businesses because we're not ready, we're not prepared. with programs. And as Aaron was saying, the agencies are not resourced, to really micromanage these programs. So they're looking for the fewest possible, biggest sources of programs that they can give money to. So that was also an impetus for this whole idea here, is to get us ready as a community to be proactive, and have programs ready to submit and apply for that money, because it will be given to people who are ready for it. Emma, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it makes, for me, it might make more sense for us to meet another time to kind of hone in on those specific points of each section first before we try to find a target date, just so we can establish more information about each session and different partners for the different sessions too, to work on with their resources.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. So shall we meet? What can we meet weekly, or what would work?
Look at my schedule. Another thing, Brad, I was going to add to your question. I did just hear this morning, we don't personally have it. We help with this funding. It's called the RCPP. It's a program through NRCS, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. And that funding is to pipe smaller canals and sublaterals, and then also on farm improvement projects. And I did just hear this money might be coming down to boundaries that already have those programs in place. So some of this money is already starting to come down, and it might just be little short windows. So we're looking to possibly apply for that this month. But this funding is like a set boundary. So this is out in the Smith Rock area. And so most all NRCS funding comes with boundaries. So it's not going to just come to Deschutes County. NRCS will have to create a boundary for those areas. But that's the littlest that I know. So I'm not even sure if this will be fully advertised or for a little. And then even that, I mean, that's might be millions of dollars coming down to a boundary that's already receiving money.
Yeah.
So I know that Sustainable Northwest, that's the group I was trying to think of. You know, they do forestry, but I think they do other things, and they're the major funnel, I think, to a lot of from the IRS money.
Oh, great.
Okay, I'm going to add this. Sustainable Northwest. So when do we? I'm going to summarize, as good as I can, and then please just correct it when I put the meeting minutes out. But what would be a good time then to meet again? And in the meantime, Aaron, if we can find a couple of farmers to talk offline, to get them interested to participate, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks we could reconvene.
Okay, so in 2 weeks
Now we have
again.
Thanksgiving, so maybe the week before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 weeks, Gretchen.
Yeah. What is so 2 weeks, so that would be the 17th. I mean, sorry, today's what's the date? The 3rd. Yeah, the 17th.
Yeah.
Same time.
Sure.
Okay. And so I'll do November 17. That would be important to make sure that I think we were missing Julian today, so that she can join as well. So I have to check in with her because she couldn't make it today. She wanted to join. All right. Well, thank you. Obviously, this is going to be really. It will take some thinking, to pull this together. So thank you for helping to get some structure around this. And I'm meeting with Megan Campbell next week, and maybe she can help us with farmers. It doesn't have to be from local. I mean, they can be anywhere from Oregon, I would say. Now, we don't need, this is not like a Deschutes County specific topic. It's really, a community-based, conversation. It can be anywhere from Oregon. I think it should be Oregon focused. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Claude, for starting this conversation. I think this is a great start, and it's great to meet everyone.
Yeah, it's going to take a while.
I don't know how helpful I'm going to be. I'm really just learning about this topic. It's not my area, but I'm not sure I'll be able to hit every meeting, but when I see I can be useful, then I will.
Josie, this is all new to most of us, really. I think Brad is just reading his way into the material. I mean, this is such a complex topic, and we have been talking about energy for decades, right? I mean, everybody knows how to turn down the thermostat and put in insulation and drive an energy.
This is a good paper that you produced. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah, but we haven't talked about food. It's just, and the headline really is photosynthesis.
Yeah.
And so the entire agricultural system, and I don't know why that is, but it has been completely ignored. And so we are now trying to stimulate a conversation around the importance of photosynthesis as part of a climate change resolution.
Yeah.
And so I've been a student on this for years now, and I'm still learning something new every conversation.
Well, there's an awful lot of red clover being put in around me, so I could just go there and talk to the people, I think, and see, what they're doing, and maybe that would help.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, and I'll reschedule us, and I'll put out some notes, and then we can we can advance the conversation via email if there's anything that comes to mind. Okay. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Klaus. Nice to meet everybody. Bye.
Thanks.
And